Senior brother Gao. Seeing what had just happened, the short, stout young man was struck with alarm. Shock quickly gave way to the urge to flee. Hanli let out a cold laugh and shot toward him like lightning, a crystalline gleam flickering at the center of his brow. The young man saw Hanli rushing at him and immediately raised his escape light, transforming into a crimson rainbow that soared into the sky and shot off into the distance without even bothering to retrieve his pair of hooked immortal blades. The crimson streak was astonishingly fast, vanishing into the far horizon in a single flash. Hanli stopped mid-charge and did not pursue. Instead, he slowly descended to the ground. The moment his feet touched down, his face turned deathly pale, and he began gasping for breath. There had never been much immortal spiritual power left in this body to begin with. Nearly all of it had already been spent in the surprise attack on the tall old man. If that short, fat youth had dared to fight, Hanli would have had no strength left to resist at all. Fortunately, the man was timid to the core. He had clearly been frightened out of his wits during the earlier clash, and Hanli's little performance had been enough to scare him away. Hanli flipped his hand and took out an Immortal Essence Stone, gripping it tightly as he drew on its immortal spiritual energy to recover. At the same time, he forced up the very last thread of immortal power left in his body and flicked a finger. A streak of black light shot out and pierced straight through the tall old man's head. With a muffled bang, the old man's head exploded. His headless corpse thudded to the ground. Once that was done, Hanli could no longer hold himself up and collapsed to the ground. Even so, he finally relaxed a little. While absorbing immortal power from the stone, he looked around at his surroundings. This stretch of yellow desert looked rather like the scene he had glimpsed earlier inside that droplet-shaped ball of light. After a long silence, Hanli lifted his gaze upward. Floating above him was the blurred phantom of a golden wheel. Of the 720 time Tao markings upon it, only a small number had gone dark so far. He closed his eyes and carefully sensed the circulation of the vast divine consciousness within his mind, savoring the sensation of the fifth layer of the spirit refinement art, while also probing the memory fragments in his sea of consciousness. This black-robed man was named Renjia. He was one of the sons of reincarnation of the Reincarnation Palace. Unlike Hanli, this man was a true son of reincarnation. He had enjoyed a vast amount of cultivation resources from the Reincarnation Palace, but in exchange he had also lived under heavy constraints. Every so often, he was required to carry out missions assigned by the palace. This time, Renjia had been carrying out one such mission in an immortal region called Kaiwan, located in the southeastern reaches of the Immortal Realm, when he had fallen into an ambush set by 5 surveillance immortal envoys from the Heavenly Court and died there. Hanli badly wanted to learn more about the Reincarnation Palace, so he carefully sifted through the memory fragments. After a long while, he raised his head, frowning slightly. Most of the fragments in Renjia's memory were useless to him, filled with cultivation details of no practical value. The truly useful parts were few, and information about the Reincarnation Palace was even scarcer. Renjia had been a son of reincarnation for over 2 million years, but he was a fanatic devoted wholly to cultivation. He had spent most of that time shut away in secluded training, almost never venturing out. Though he held the title of son of reincarnation, he had never shown much interest in becoming deeply involved with the palace itself. He had undertaken many missions for them, yet had met very few of its upper ranks. The person he dealt with most often was a reincarnation envoy, the liaison between him and the palace, who would appear from time to assign him missions. Aside from that, there was nothing more of substance regarding the Reincarnation Palace. Hanli shook his head and looked once more at the phantom golden wheel overhead. More than a quarter of the time Tao markings on it had already dimmed. After a brief moment of thought, he rose and walked over to the tall old man's corpse. After searching it, he took the man's storage treasure. He then went to the other 3 corpses nearby and collected their storage treasures as well. Only then did Hanli sit down again. He removed Renjia's storage ring, lined up all 5 storage treasures before him, and rapidly inspected them one by one. All 5 had been Tai realm cultivators, so the contents of their storage treasures were naturally abundant. There were large quantities of Immortal Essence Stones, many high-grade immortal treasures, all kinds of precious materials, medicinal pills, and more. Hanli found them deeply tempting, but none of these things could possibly be brought back with him. He could only withdraw his spiritual sense with regret and look for something else that might still be useful. A short while later, a small pile of items had appeared on the ground before him. Most were books and jade slips. In addition, there was an openwork golden disc, a golden token, and a white compass. Hanli picked up the openwork golden disc and the white compass, glanced over them a few times, then set them aside and took up the golden token instead. He had seen both of those other items before in Gong Shujiu's storage treasure. The golden disc was used by the surveillance immortal envoys to communicate with one another, while the white compass was meant to detect the aura of the spirit refinement art. Neither required careful study. The golden token looked like some sort of identity badge. Each of the 4 people, including the tall old man, had one. Its edges were carved with elegant wandering dragon patterns. One side bore the character for prison, while the other had only a serial number. Hanli examined it for a moment, then set it aside and quickly began leafing through the books and jade slips. Most of them recorded cultivation methods or secret arts. Since they had been carried on the persons of Tai cultivators, they were naturally no ordinary goods, and they truly broadened Hanli's horizons. Although there was still some time left, Hanli clearly had no intention of spending too much of it here. He skimmed through the books one after another without studying them closely, much less trying to memorize them. Then suddenly, he gave a soft exclamation and looked down at a gray jade slip in his hand. What was recorded inside was not a cultivation art or secret technique, but a pill formula. And not just any pill formula, but one for a Tao pill called the Vajra Ironbone pill. This pill contained the law of metal. In addition to helping one comprehend that law, it also had the effect of strengthening the physical body. Hanli looked up several times at the golden wheel overhead. Fewer than half the dim time Tao markings remained unextinguished. He withdrew his gaze, spent a little time committing the Vajra Ironbone pill formula to memory, then immediately tossed the slip aside and continued checking the other items. He soon finished going through all the books and jade slips, swept them back up with a wave of his hand, and then carrying the 5 storage treasures, immediately rose into the air and shot off into the distance. A few breaths later he descended again. Below him in the desert was an oasis, with a small lake at its center. Hanli waved his hand and sent out a mass of black light, wrapping it around the storage treasures and sinking them to the bottom of the lake, where he buried them. Once that was done, he immediately sat down cross-legged beside the oasis and began contemplating the mysteries of the 5th layer of the spirit refinement art stored in his mind. The reason he had not carefully inspected everything in the storage treasures was to save time for this very purpose. Time passed little by little, and the markings on the golden disc dimmed one after another. At last, the final time Tao marking also went dark. A low, mournful whistling sound rose in the air. The golden wheel in midair suddenly turned black. Then with a rumble it transformed into a black vortex. A powerful suction force burst from it and enveloped Hanli's body. His soul had no power to resist. With a whoosh it was sucked straight in. Darkness fell over his vision once more. His consciousness blurred and faded away. Who knew how much time passed before Hanli slowly regained awareness and opened his eyes, only to discover that he had returned to the cave dwelling where he had been before. The Palm Heaven bottle was still floating in midair, though the green light radiating from it was rapidly fading until it finally vanished altogether. The little bottle also shrank back to its original size and dropped down. Hanli reached out and caught it. A sharp light flickered in his eyes as he looked at the bottle, then sent his spiritual sense into it, trying once more to communicate with the bottle's spirit he had only briefly glimpsed before. But no matter how he called to it, or whatever methods he used to probe the bottle, the spirit gave no response at all, as though it had once again fallen into slumber. With a helpless sigh, Hanli put the Palm Heaven bottle away and shook his head. Then he took out a jade slip and recorded the formula for the Vajra Ironbone pill that he had memorized earlier, lest he forget it. After storing away the jade slip, Hanli took a deep breath and closed his eyes once more. This journey of the soul had carried him into that mysterious space, where he had seen that strange river bearing scene after scene of bizarre images. The experience had left him shaken, but also full of questions. It seemed those scenes belonged to the past histories of certain people. From what he could tell, those people all appeared to be either dying or already dead. His soul could attach itself to them, allowing him to probe some of the memory fragments that had not yet dispersed and through them discover certain things, or even do certain things. As for whether he could truly choose his target for the soul travel, that would have to wait until the next opportunity to explore further. The cost, however, was not small. Each time his soul traveled in this way, every single time Dao marking on his mantra treasured wheel was wiped out. Though he now recovered much faster than before, it still required a considerable amount of time to restore them. Aside from that, the greatest gain from this journey had been what he learned from Ranjia, the cultivation insights for the 5th layer of the spirit refinement art. With those experiences in hand, he was confident he could greatly improve his progress in cultivating that 5th layer. Just as he was about to begin, he suddenly opened his eyes and looked outside. A ball of white light flew in through the main gate of the cave dwelling and circled through the chamber for a moment before abruptly bursting apart. Hanli frowned slightly but still got to his feet, lifted the surrounding restrictions, and walked toward the entrance. With a rumble, the cave dwelling door opened. Standing outside was a gray-robed old man with a goat beard and a somewhat sly, rat-eyed look. "So it's fellow Taoist Lu. It has been quite some time," Hanli said, pausing in mild surprise before smiling. The goateed old man was Lu Guanzi, who lived nearby in Sunward Valley. He got along well with people like Taoist Jinyang and Immortal Venerable Ruhua, and often came by Wild Crane Valley to visit. Hanli knew him fairly well too. "Fellow Taoist Li, I hope I am not intruding," Lu Guanzi said with a smile and a cupped fist salute. "What brings you to my humble abode today?" Come in," Hanli said with a hearty laugh, inviting him inside. "I won't go in. Let's speak here," Lu Guanzi said, waving a hand with a faint smile. "Then please go ahead." "I'm all ears," Hanli replied, smiling slightly. "It's nothing especially major. Some time ago, several fellow Taoists and I discovered a ruin deep in the northern Tianyue Mountains. However, there are still many dangerous restrictions left inside, along with other hazards. So the rest of us each returned to invite some capable people to make another attempt together. Fellow Taoist Li, your strength is among the best in the valleys around here. I wonder whether you might be interested in joining us to test your luck," Lu Guanzi asked with a broad smile. At this, Han Li's brows drew together slightly, and for a moment he said nothing. Seeing that expression on Han Li's face, Lu Guanzi's smile faded somewhat, but he did not press him. "Thank you for the invitation, fellow Taoist Lu, but I have other important matters to attend to lately. I'm afraid I can only decline your kindness," Han Li said after a moment of silence. "Oh, since you have pressing matters elsewhere, I can hardly insist," Lu Guanzi replied. From Han Li's tone, it was obvious his mind was made up. Though disappointed, he took his leave without fuss. Han Li escorted him out, then closed the cave entrance and returned to the secret chamber, where he sat down cross-legged once more. The truth was, his refusal had not been only because of the spirit refinement art. As he thought this over, he formed a hand seal. Golden light blazed from his body, and the mantra treasured wheel appeared behind him. All 720 Dao markings on it were gray and dark. With every time Dao marking dimmed, his strength had been greatly reduced as well. At a time like this, no matter how tempting the opportunity, he would never choose to go out in search of treasure. He waved his hand, dispelling the golden light, and closed his eyes again. A layer of crystalline radiance emerged at the center of Han Li's brow, gently rippling and flickering. The door to his cave dwelling remained tightly shut and was never opened again. Seeing this, the other people in Wild Crane Valley naturally did not come to disturb him. Time flowed on, and in the blink of an eye more than 30 years had passed. Then one day, a streak of light came hurtling in from afar and landed before Han Li's cave dwelling. From within it emerged a white-haired old man with disheveled hair. It was none other than Immortal Venerable Ruhua. Before he could even send a voice transmission, the cave door opened from within. "Fellow Taoist Ruhua, forgive me for not coming farther out to greet you," Han Li said with a smile as he stepped out through the door. "You honestly. Our cave dwellings are barely any distance apart. What meaning is there in talking about greeting me near or far?" Ruhua said with a laugh. "Come, let's go inside and talk," Han Li said, stepping aside and making an inviting gesture. "No need. I only came today to deliver something to you. You were in seclusion the whole time before, so I had to delay it until now, Rohua said, hurriedly waving his hand. At this, Han Li's brows rose at once, and he exclaimed in delight. Could it be that you found the Xuanji crystal stone? A treasure like that is hardly something one comes across casually. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you, Rohua said with a helpless smile. Oh? If it isn't that, then what is it? Han Li asked, puzzled. A white light flashed in Rohua's palm as he tossed something forward. Han Li reached up and caught it. It was a palm-sized white jade token, carved with the image of a red leaf. To the left of the design were the ancient seal script characters, Outer Sect Elder Token. It was the Outer Sect Elder Token of Fireleaf Sect, the sect to which Rohua currently belonged. When Han Li turned it over, he saw that in the center of a ring of tiny runes were engraved the two characters, Li Han. Fellow Taoist Rohua, what is this? Han Li said, looking up at the white-haired elder. With this little thing, you're now officially a cultivator registered under our Fireleaf sect. From now on you can freely enter and leave the inner city of Jukuan. That said, it's only a title. There's no elder stipend in it for you. We're just a small family business after all, and we can't afford to support a golden immortal level outer sect elder, Rohua said half-jokingly. Fellow Taoist Rohua, you've put your heart into this. Rest assured, since I'm now carrying the title of Fireleaf Sect Outer Sect Elder, I can't very well do nothing at all. From now on, every 300 years I'll refine one batch of true immortal level pills for the sect. Naturally, the sect will have to provide the materials, Han Li said after a slight bow. Fellow Taoist Li, didn't we choose to live in seclusion here precisely for the sake of peace and quiet? I gave you that token not because I wanted to strike a bargain and drag you back into the cage of sect affairs. You truly don't need to do this, Rohua said, his expression turning serious. It's only one batch of pills. For an alchemist like me, that's hardly much beyond a little extra effort. But you, on the other hand, getting this elder token for me must have taken no small amount of work, no? Han Li said, cutting him off with a wave of his hand. Rohua had said he had no intention of making terms, but Han Li understood perfectly well the principle of repaying a peach with a plum. And besides, how could he fail to notice the delight hidden in the corners of Rohua's eyes? One batch of true immortal level pills every 300 years might not look like much in the short term, but let it accumulate over tens of thousands of years and what then? It might not be enough to raise Fireleaf Sect to the status of a major sect in a single leap, but it would certainly be enough to widen the gap between it and all the sects that had once stood on equal footing. How could one truly return to nature after spending so long inside the cage of a sect? In the end, Rohua still had not been able to let go of the sect, nor stop planning for its future. Within the territory governed by Jukuan City, any formal personnel changes in the various medium and large sects were not merely internal sect matters. They also had to be reviewed and registered at the administrative palace established by the Black Mountain Immortal Palace. Outer sect disciples did not count as formal appointments, but from inner sect disciple to outer sect elder, from core disciple to inner sect elder, the higher the rank, the stricter the review. There are still a few old connections at the Black Mountain Administrative Palace. The registration itself didn't take too much effort, Rohua said. No matter what, I still owe you my thanks, Han Li said, bowing again. Fellow Taoist Li, if you keep being this polite, I may just take the token back, Rohua said. Haha, then I'll gladly drop the courtesy, Han Li replied with a laugh. After chatting for a little while longer, Rohua took his leave and flew off. Han Li turned the jade token over in his hand. After some brief thought, he went back into the cave dwelling. 2 months later, inside Jukuan City, streets and alleys crisscrossed in every direction. Shops stood one after another in dense rows, while freight wagons pulled by strange beasts moved among the bustling crowds and shouting voices. Everywhere was a scene of extraordinary liveliness. Up in the sky, enormous merchant ferries could be seen flying along fixed void routes, landing and taking off in orderly fashion at the city's ports as they transported all kinds of goods. Separating the inner and outer cities stood a gigantic wall over 100 zhang tall. Patrol cultivators guarded and inspected it, and in each of the 4 cardinal directions stood a magnificent gate, each guarded by true immortal cultivators. At the north gate of the inner city, the crowd was relatively sparse. Aside from a few people hurrying past, only a little over 100 individuals remained there, lined up in a long queue and waiting their turn to be inspected by the stationed cultivators before entering the city. Somewhere in the latter part of the line stood Han Li in a blue robe, his gaze drifting as he looked up and down at the city gate. He could see that both the upper edge of the gate passage and the tunnel walls were inscribed with formation runes. Whenever someone entered the passage, the runes lit up with a blue glow, apparently used to examine the cultivation level of anyone entering. Whenever the blue light lit up, it indicated that the person had cultivation at least at the early true immortal stage. So long as their identity could be verified and it was confirmed that they were registered cultivators of a local sect, they were allowed to enter the inner city without issue. Han Li followed behind the others, slowly advancing with the line. At that moment, a figure suddenly swept straight past the crowd. He did not line up, did not show any proof of identity, and paid no heed whatsoever to the city guards, walking directly into the gate passage. Just as everyone was beginning to wonder, the formation runes carved into the walls of the gate tunnel suddenly flared with dazzling golden light. A Tai Jade immortal. The people around them clicked their tongues in amazement. Jukuin City might be the foremost great city in the northern part of the Black Mountain Immortal Domain, but most of the cultivators seen there on ordinary days were true immortals and golden immortals. Opportunities to see Tai Realm cultivators were comparatively rare, and yet now one had appeared right before their eyes. By the time the crowd recovered enough to try to catch a glimpse of the person's face, the figure had already drifted into the city and disappeared. After the brief stir, the line quieted once more and continued moving toward the gate. About half an incense stick later, Han Li reached the tunnel entrance. The runes above his head also lit up, releasing waves of bright white light. "A golden immortal cultivator," said the middle-aged guard stationed there, looking Han Li over. Han Li returned the glance with a smile and handed over the Fireleaf Sect Elder token. The middle-aged cultivator nodded slightly, took the token, and placed it on a stone platform beside him. The small formation on the platform began to operate immediately, releasing brilliant radiance. "No problems. Senior, please enter," the guard said after a moment, handing the token back. Han Li took it, nodded to him and stepped into the gate passage. The moment he emerged on the other side and set foot in the inner city, he at once felt that even the surrounding light had become a little brighter. The spiritual energy in the air also seemed richer than before. Han Li looked around and discovered that faint, strange runes had been carved all over the ground and onto the walls and buildings around him, linked together as though they spread throughout every street. What a grand undertaking! They've built this inner city like an immortal sect in itself. No wonder those fellows from Idle Cloud Mountain seldom get the chance to come here. Yet all yearn for Jukuin's inner city so badly, Han Li murmured in admiration. With that, he began walking deeper into the city along the broad avenue before him. Compared with the bustle and clamor of the outer city, the inner city was much quieter. There were not many pedestrians on the streets, and most of those there were hurrying between one shop and the next. Han Li did not waste time. Among those shops, he picked a 3-story pavilion that looked fairly substantial and stepped inside. Not long afterward, however, the shopkeeper personally escorted him back out with an apologetic expression. According to the shopkeeper, the Xuanji crystal stone was a top-grade spiritual material. In all of Jukuin City, there were likely no more than 3 shops that might possess it, and even those would be highly unlikely to put it up for sale. Han Li had long expected as much, so he was not especially disappointed. He still intended to test his luck in the city. When Taoist Jinyang received Han Li's voice transmission, he quite clearly paused for a moment. He seemed to fall into hesitation, and only after quite a long while did he finally reply by voice transmission. "My sincerest apologies. This golden jade silk was not easy to come by, and I cannot resell it to you. But please rest assured, fellow Taoist, if the Xuanji crystal stone appears at the auction, I will do everything I can to secure it for you. If you cannot resell it, then surely you can at least tell me how one obtains this golden jade silk?" Han Li asked again. Although the Yukuin Tower auction will not be held for another 200 years or so, preparations have long been underway. I've heard they're short of an alchemist this year to appraise medicinal pills. I've seen that your attainments in alchemy are considerable, fellow Taoist Li. Why not give it a try? Jinyang replied again only after a pause. So your own golden jade silk was obtained that way as well? Hanli asked, his brow twitching slightly. I'm trying to help you in good faith. If you keep digging like this, it becomes rather tasteless. Taoist Jinyang replied with a sigh. Then many thanks, Hanli said, and truly asked no further questions. Immortal Venerable Rohua and the others knew nothing of this exchange. They continued drinking together, laughing and scolding Taoist Jinyang for being too stingy. Half a month later, Hanli left Idle Cloud Mountain again. Following the directions Jinyang had given him, he headed straight for Yukuan Tower after entering Jukuan's inner city. Yukuan Tower looked exactly as it had when he last came. Its main gates were shut tight and sealed with talismans. Hanli went around the building and followed the street behind it deeper inward, until he finally entered a dead-end alley only 6 chi wide. Reaching the gray-white stone wall at the end of the alley, he raised a hand. Spiritual power gathered in his palm, and when he pressed it against the wall, an invisible suction force pulled him in, drawing his whole body into the stone. Hanli felt only a moment of darkness before he found himself standing in a spacious courtyard. Then came a sharp clatter of armor, and several warriors clad in gleaming silver armor closed in around him, surrounding him at once. Hanli swept his gaze over those men, and immediately realized that they carried no living aura at all. They were all Dao soldiers. What startled him further was that the armor they wore was covered in spiritual patterns, and each suit was plainly no ordinary object, with powerful fluctuations emanating from it. Every one of them likely possessed strength not inferior to that of a Mahayana cultivator. Of course, before a golden immortal they were hardly worth mentioning, but who knew what other special restrictions might still be hidden inside them? Who comes here and for what purpose? Asked a somewhat mechanical voice from one of the Dao soldiers. I heard Yukuan Tower needs an alchemist, so I came to try my hand, Hanli said directly without moving. Follow me. One Dao soldier spoke, then turned and walked toward a great hall at the rear of the courtyard. Hanli followed him. The other Dao soldiers formed ranks and trailed behind as well, step for step. Upon reaching the hall entrance, all the Dao soldiers split into 2 lines and stood side by side along either side of the doors motionless. After glancing around briefly, Hanli stepped forward, pushed the doors open himself and entered. The great hall was brightly lit. Directly facing the entrance were 3 broad seats. On either side sat an old man in crimson robes, one thin and gaunt, wearing a tall crown, the other broad and heavy set, with a face like a dark red date. The central seat, however, stood empty. The clothing of the 2 old men was of the same style, with a flame emblem embroidered on each chest. Resting across the flame were 2 crossed shapes resembling iron hammers. So you say you have come to apply as a pill appraisal master? Asked the tall crowned elder on the left, his voice somewhat hoarse. That is correct, Hanli replied clearly. Do you know what standards we require of our alchemists? Asked the burly elder on the right. I do not, Hanli said, shaking his head. What we require is, at minimum, an alchemist capable of refining Tai-level pills. Are you qualified? Said the crowned elder, his tone still utterly without fluctuation. In that case, so long as I can refine a Tai-level pill, I can obtain a piece of golden jade silk? Hanli asked, a slight movement in his brow. That's correct. If you truly can do it, then naturally you are qualified to participate in this auction. At the same time, you must also fulfill the duties of a pill appraisal master. The burly elder replied with a nod. Do you have a pill chamber here? Lend me one, Hanli asked, not wasting another word. The side hall on the left, the burly elder said, lifting a hand to point. Hanli had come prepared for this. Without another word, he turned and walked into the adjoining chamber, closing the door behind him. At that moment, a figure slowly emerged from the rear hall and sat down heavily in the central seat. Glancing toward the side chamber, the newcomer said, quite cautious. He even set up an isolation barrier. And not a low-grade one either. Deputy Mountain Lord, can this man truly refine Tai-level pills? The crowned elder asked, turning slightly toward the figure in the seat of honor. How should I know? We're just trying our luck. Let's wait and see the result, the man replied with a smile. In the blink of an eye, more than 5 months had passed. At last, the door of the side chamber, which had remained tightly shut all this time, finally opened. After one failed attempt, Hanli had used the very last remaining set of spiritual materials, and at last succeeded in refining 3 jade purity pills. This pill is brimming with spiritual energy and of exceptional quality. Of all the jade purity pills I've seen, this one ranks in at least the top 3, said the tall-crowned elder, holding one freshly refined pill in his palm and praising it. Indeed, indeed. Fellow Taoist, your attainments in alchemy are superb. You are fully qualified to serve as one of our pill appraisal masters, said the burly, red-faced elder. He was calmer than the other, but a smile still appeared on his face. If that is so, then it is also time for your person in charge, fellow Taoist Jinyang, to come out and meet me, no? Hanli said with a sudden smile, taking the jade purity pill back from the elder's hand. At these words, both crimson-robed elders stiffened visibly and exchanged glances, neither speaking for a moment. Haha. Just as expected of fellow Taoist Li. You guessed my identity at once. A burst of hearty laughter sounded from the rear hall as Taoist Jinyang slowly walked out. At this moment, he too wore a crimson robe of the same style as the other two, except that the flame embroidered on his chest was golden rather than red. What is there to guess? When I first arrived, neither of them even asked who I was, yet they directly let me try refining pills. That clearly meant they already knew my identity, and after thinking it over, the only person who knew I would come here seems to have been fellow Taoist Jinyang. Besides, you practically seemed afraid I wouldn't guess you were the man in charge, leaving the seat of honor in the hall empty like that, Hanli said with a smile. Haha, fellow Taoist Li, in future you should learn that seeing through something is one thing, but saying it aloud is another, Jinyang said, glancing at the empty grand seat and laughing. With a flick of his sleeve, the 2 crimson-robed elders immediately bowed their leave and withdrew into the rear hall. Ahem. Fellow Taoist Li, the truth is I had wanted to tell you directly from the start. But the matter of the auction is jointly organized by Black Mountain Immortal Palace and our 100 Creations Mountain branch, so there are certain rules that simply must be observed. I knew your skill in alchemy well enough already. In fact, having you come here was really just to go through the motions, Jinyang said with a light cough and a smile. I appreciate your regard. Still, I hope fellow Taoist Jinyang will no longer keep things from me. What exactly is your identity? Hanli asked, his brow furrowing slightly. Jinyang sighed instead of answering right away. He pulled a wine gourd from beneath his robe and took a long drink. I am one of the 72 deputy mountain lords of 100 Creations Mountain, responsible for overseeing the branch sect in the Black Earth Immortal Domain, he said at last, once the wine had gone down. The Black Earth Immortal Domain? Why not the Black Mountain Immortal Domain? Hanli asked, puzzled. The Black Earth Immortal Domain, Black Mountain Immortal Domain, Fuse Immortal Domain, and Yuanjing Immortal Domain all lie relatively close together. And now that the Savage Wasteland barrier is gone, they are collectively known as the Four Alliance Immortal Region. Our branch of 100 Creations Mountain is based in the Black Earth Immortal Domain, but its sphere of coverage extends over the entire Four Alliance region. Otherwise, they would hardly send a dignified deputy mountain lord like me to sit here, Jinyang explained openly. If that is the case, then why hide your identity and stay in Wild Crane Valley? Hanli asked, still frowning. My temperament is much like that old ghost Rahua's. Neither of us can stand being constantly bothered by trivial matters. I'd heard long ago that there was such a marvelous place in the Black Mountain Immortal Domain, so I came wandering here out of admiration. Along the way I met Yuziki and became close friends with him, and together we came to Idle Cloud Mountain and settled in Wild Crane Valley, Jinyang explained. Seeing that Hanli still looked faintly unconvinced, Jinyang could not help but laugh and scold him. You really don't know how to recognize a good heart, do you? I wasn't even supposed to personally handle this Jukuin City auction in the first place, and I never wanted to interfere in it. Wasn't it only because I was trying to gather news for you about the Flower Heart Stone that I got involved again? And now you still suspect me for no reason. Don't you think that's a bit unfair? So it truly is only that? Hanli asked with a faint smile, his expression easing. Heh, not entirely. I come to the Yukuin Tower auction every time. In the past, though, I always came as a private bidder. This time is the exception. I actually involved myself in the auction's affairs, Jinyoung said with an embarrassed laugh. No matter what, I still owe you thanks for this. You've long wanted the brewing methods for fire saliva wine and red mulberry wine. Once I finish organizing them, I'll give them to you along with some of my own notes on brewing. As for Wild Crane Valley, you can rest easy. Lee is not the sort to talk too much. I will not say a single extra word, Hanli said, offering a slight salute. Jinyoung raised a thumb in approval. Fellow Taoist Lee, that's true loyalty. Come, let's have a drink. Today, you and I won't stop until we're dead drunk. For more than half a day afterward, Hanli went from shop to shop, visiting dozens in succession, only to get the same answer everywhere. Quite a few shopkeepers even urged him to make other plans early, saying that although the item had appeared in Jukuin City before, the chance of it showing up again was less than 1 in 10,000. Each time Hanli would offer a brief word of thanks and then hurry on without pause to the next shop. By dusk, as the sky darkened, Hanli arrived at the Yukuin pavilion that Immortal Venerable Rahua had mentioned before. It was somewhat different from what he had imagined. There was no grand, towering structure of overwhelming magnificence. Instead, it was simply a rather large octagonal tower, with red walls, green tiles, and bells hanging from the corners of the roof, carrying a rustic charm reminiscent of the mortal world. At that moment, the main gate on the south side of the tower was tightly shut, and a ceiling talisman bearing the mark of the Black Mountain Immortal Palace was pasted outside. After making inquiries, Hanli finally learned that Yukuin Pavilion was not a commercial house at all, but a venue used exclusively for auctions. It only opened once every 3,000 years, during the city's founding celebration, and the next opening was still 200 or 300 years away. Seeing that, Hanli found a fairly private immortal inn inside Jukuin City, rented a temporary cave dwelling, and settled in for the time being. During the day he went out searching. At night he shut himself away to cultivate. In the blink of an eye 5 or 6 years passed. He had found nothing at all regarding the Xuanji crystal stone, but he had learned quite a bit about the market conditions in Jukuin's inner city. The place truly deserved its reputation as a gathering place of immortals and merchants alike. The sheer variety of spirit materials and spirit medicines, and the abundance of puppets and magic treasures, far surpassed any great city in the northern cold immortal region. What was more, in terms of both quality and price, this place held a considerable advantage. Compared with the rather arbitrary pricing of goods within the Impermanence Alliance, the trade here was clearly more orderly and standardized. So, in the course of searching for the Xuanji crystal stone, Hanli sold off quite a few immortal tools and spirit materials he had no use for, and also managed to buy many auxiliary ingredients for refining pills, including the components for the sushiden. Still, he did not dare to buy too much. For each type of medicinal ingredient, he purchased only 1 or 2 portions at most. After all, if he really did come across the Xuanji crystal stone later, there was no telling how many immortal essence stones it might cost. Back in the Nethercold Immortal Manor, he had indeed made a fortune, but after those hundreds of years of expenditure in the savage wilderness realm, the farewell gifts he had given to Jin Tong and Xiao Bai, and his recent spending in the city, he had less than 500,000 immortal essence stones left. That sounded like a lot, and in truth it was a substantial sum, but compared with what he had before entering the savage wilderness, it had already shrunk by more than half. The speed at which he was spending money was enough to make even Hanli himself feel the strain, and he resolved to be far more careful with his finances in the future. By now, he had already searched through most of the major shops in the city, yet there was still not the slightest trace of news about the Xuanji crystal stone. His cultivation had also been delayed quite a bit, so Hanli left Jukuin City and returned once more to Wild Crane Valley. Life in the valley naturally continued in keeping with its name, serene and leisurely. Less than half a year after his return, Master Jingyang suddenly sent word, inviting him to gather at Wanghua Pavilion in the valley. He said that the purple charmer wine he had brewed earlier had finally aged enough, and he wanted everyone to come taste it. Hanli had intended to decline, but after receiving 3 flying messages in succession from the man, he had no choice but to leave his cave dwelling. Wanghua Pavilion lay deep within Wild Crane Valley, nearest to Imo Wushua's cave residence. It was a waterside pavilion built in the middle of a deep emerald pool. It was not especially large, but with its carved beams and painted rafters, and its exquisitely crafted structure, it had a charm all its own. By the time Han Li arrived, everyone else was already there. Duan Yuzai and the others were gathered around the stone table in the pavilion. Spirit fruits and immortal vegetables had been set out on the table, and beside them stood a jade-green wine pot filled with deep violet liquor, from which strands of rich fragrance drifted through the air. Yuziki, now dressed in a snow-white robe, sat slightly apart from the others. A stick of sandalwood incense burned before him as he sat cross-legged behind an ancient zither, his slender fingers plucking the strings. His eyes held a warm smile, and from time to time he glanced toward the only woman in the pavilion. Taoistly, in all of Wild Crane Valley, you're the only one with refined enough taste to share my fondness for this sort of thing. If you hadn't come, my heart would truly have been wounded, Master Jingyang complained when he saw Han Li arrive late, lifting a crystal-clear emerald wine cup in his hand. What are you saying, Taoist Jingyang? I only returned from Jukuan City not long ago. There have still been some trivial matters keeping me occupied. Otherwise, how could I have spoken of declining? Please forgive me, all of you. Han Li smiled and cupped his fists toward the group. I heard Taoist Li went in search of that flower heart stone. Did you have any success? Asked a beautiful woman in a snow-white dress, graceful in figure. She gave Han Li the slightest bow in return and then spoke. Thank you for your concern, Fairy Emo. This trip was for nothing. I came back empty-handed. Han Li shook his head with a bitter smile. My old acquaintance also sent me word. He said he made inquiries in many places, but there was still no news at all of the Xuanji crystal stone, said Duan Yuzai, still dressed in his neat black robes. This sort of thing cannot be rushed. In the end, it all depends on fate. For today, let us not speak of it any further. We mustn't disappoint Taoist Yu's lofty melody nor Taoist Jingyang's fine purple charmer vintage, Han Li said with a hearty laugh, shifting the subject. Exactly. Taoist Li, have a cup first. Master Jingyang cheerfully filled the jade cup he had already prepared with the purple wine and handed it to Han Li. Han Li took it, lifted it to his nose, and inhaled lightly before saying slowly, 100-leaf fragrance, Pajuo fruit, purple flower Bodhi. Taoist Jingyang has truly spared no expense. To think you put so many fine things into a single pot of fruit wine. Incredible. Just from one sniff you've nearly ruined my brewing formula. You named every last ingredient without a single mistake. How in the world did you do that? Master Jingyang cried in astonishment. Not worth mentioning. Come, let's keep drinking. Han Li shook his head with an air of calm self-assurance. Back in Candle Dragon Dao, after spending so much time with Taoist Huyen, Han Li had drunk no small number of fine wines. The two of them had also exchanged quite a bit about brewing, and it was through that Han Li had honed both his nose and his eye. Seeing this, everyone began laughing and chatting more freely. One joke led to another, and the atmosphere grew even more lively. When the wine had reached its most enjoyable point, Master Jingyang suddenly turned with a smug grin to immortal venerable Rohua and said, Old Rohua, you spent so many years in Jukuan City. Have you ever attended an auction at Yukuan Pavilion? That is a grand event held only during the city's founding celebration once every 3,000 years. Every time, the number of attendees is limited, and the golden jade silk, used as admission, is almost impossible to get. I still remember the last auction. It was unprecedentedly grand. Someone on the market resold one of those passes, and the highest price it fetched was 600 Immortal Essence Stones. The key was that there was demand but no supply. TSK, 600 Immortal Essence Stones just to go in and have a look. I may be the Grand Elder of Fireleaf Sect, but I'm not about to squander resources like that. So no, I've never gone, Rohua replied, glancing at him. So that means you've never seen a golden jade silk either? Master Jingyang said with a smile. Old man, what exactly are you trying to say? Rohua asked, frowning. I just want to broaden your horizons. As he spoke, Master Jingyang waved a hand, and golden light burst from his palm. A palm-sized sheet of gold foil appeared. It looked as if it had been woven from impossibly fine golden threads. Various birds, beasts, fish, and insects were patterned across its surface, and at its center stood an octagonal tower. Han Li's eyes swept over it, and he recognized it immediately. It was Yukuan Pavilion. This is impossible. There are still nearly 200 years before the next celebration. There's no way a golden jade silk could be circulating this early, Rohua said, sitting bolt upright, his face filled with disbelief. What? Are you saying my golden jade silk is fake? Master Jingyang's old face darkened with displeasure. Of course I know it isn't fake. The golden jade silk is refined by 100 Craft Mountain through a secret method. No one else could imitate that level of workmanship, and with Black Mountain Immortal Palace overseeing it, who would dare forge it? That would be courting death. That's exactly why I find it so unbelievable, Rohua exclaimed. When Hanli heard the words 100 Craft Mountain, his heart stirred slightly. He was no stranger to that immortal sect. As far back as the spirit realm, he had cultivated one of its techniques, the 100 Vein Treasure Refinement Art, and since then he had heard its name many times. It was said to be one of the greatest artifact refining sects in the entire Immortal Realm, with branches in many major immortal regions. Its strength and influence were vast beyond measure. At this, Yuziki also stopped playing the zither and came to stand behind Imo. With everyone's attention now focused on him, Master Jingyang suddenly changed expression and, imitating Hanli, slowly shook his head and said in a composed tone, "Not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. You old rascal, you invited us here for drinks with no good intentions at all. You just wanted to show off that golden jade silk of yours, didn't you?" Rohua spat. Not so, not so. I only brought out this golden jade silk because I wanted to tell Daoistly that when the Yukuin Pavilion auction comes, I'll keep an eye out for him. If the Xuanji crystal stone appears again, I'll make sure to win it for him, Master Jingyang said, tipping back another cup of wine and speaking with exaggerated nonchalance. Old Jingyang, if that's the case, why not help him all the way? Since you've carried the Buddha this far, why not carry him to the Western Heaven? Just give the golden jade silk directly to Daoistly, Rohua said, suddenly wearing a mischievous smile. Well, I also want to see whether there's any treasure at the auction that catches my eye. Heh? Master Jingyang faltered when he heard that. Still grinning, he quietly put the golden jade silk away. In truth, Rohua's words stirred Hanli as well, but he did not speak openly. Instead, he sent a voice transmission to Master Jingyang. Daoist Jingyang, can you transfer this golden jade silk to me? Whether you want immortal essence stones, pills, or magic treasures, just name your price. If I have it, I won't refuse. If I don't, I'll find a way to get it for you. Even those rare wine recipes you've been coveting all this time, I can hand them over without reservation. Upon receiving Hanli's transmission, Master Jingyang visibly paused. He seemed to hesitate for quite some time before replying through voice transmission. My sincere apologies. This golden jade silk was not easy to obtain, so I cannot sell it to you. But rest assured, if the Xuanji crystal stone appears at the auction, I will definitely find a way to secure it for you. Since you cannot transfer it, surely you can at least tell me how it was obtained? Hanli asked again. Although the Yukuin Pavilion auction won't be held for another 200 years, preparations have already begun. I hear they are lacking an alchemist this year to appraise medicinal pills. I think your attainments in alchemy are rather deep, Daoistly. Why not go and try? After another brief pause, Master Jingyang transmitted back. In that case, was your golden jade silk obtained the same way? Hanli asked, his brow lifting slightly. I'm trying to help you out here. If you insist on digging to the bottom of everything, that takes all the fun out of it, Master Jingyang replied with a sigh. Then many thanks. And just like that, Hanli truly asked no more. Rohua and the others knew nothing of this exchange. They continued drinking, laughing, and berating Master Jingyang for being too stingy. Half a month later, Hanli left Idle Cloud Mountain once again. Following the directions Master Jingyang had given him, he went straight to Yukuin Pavilion after entering Jukuin's inner city. Yukuin Pavilion looked exactly as it had the last time he came. Its gates shut tight, sealed with talismans. Hanli circled past Yukuin Pavilion and continued inward along the street behind it, eventually entering a dead-end alley barely 6 feet wide. When he reached the gray-white stone wall at the end of the alley, he raised a palm. Spiritual power gathered in his hand, and when he pressed it against the wall, an invisible force seized him and pulled him into it. Hanli only felt his vision go black for an instant, and then his figure had already appeared in a spacious courtyard. Immediately afterward came the clattering sound of armor striking armor, and several warriors clad in gleaming silver armor surrounded him at once. Han Li's gaze swept across those people, and he discovered at once that they carried no living aura at all. They were all Dao soldiers. What surprised him even more was that the armor on them was covered in spirit inscriptions. None of it looked ordinary, and waves of powerful fluctuation rolled from each one. Each of them was likely no weaker than a great ascension cultivator. Though that meant little before a golden immortal, who knew what other special restrictions or hidden mechanisms might be stored within them? Who comes here and for what purpose? At that moment, a somewhat mechanical voice emerged from the mouth of one of the Dao soldiers. I heard that Yukuan Pavilion requires an alchemist, so I came to try, Han Li said bluntly without moving. Come with me. After speaking, one of the Dao soldiers turned and walked toward a great hall at the rear of the courtyard. Han Li followed after it, while the remaining Dao soldiers fell into line and trailed behind step for step. When they reached the entrance to the hall, all the Dao soldiers split into two groups and stood in ranks along either side of the doorway motionless. After glancing around, Han Li stepped forward on his own, pushed open the doors and entered. The hall was brightly lit. Directly opposite the entrance stood 3 broad chairs. On the left and right sat 2 elders in crimson robes. One wore a high crown and had a thin frame. The other had a face as red as a date and a burly build. The chair in the middle, however, was empty. The 2 elders wore robes of the same style. Embroidered on each chest was a flame emblem crossed by 2 hammer-like objects. You say you have come to apply as a pill appraiser? Asked the high-crowned elder on the left, his voice somewhat hoarse. That is correct, Han Li said clearly. Do you know what requirements we have for alchemists? Asked the burly elder on the right. I do not, Han Li replied, shaking his head. What we require at minimum is an alchemist capable of refining Tai-grade pills. Are you qualified? Said the high-crowned elder, his tone still utterly flat. In that case, as long as I can refine a Tai-grade pill, I can obtain a golden jade silk? Han Li asked, his brow twitching slightly. Correct. If you can truly do it, then naturally you qualify to attend this auction. Of course, you must also fulfill the duties of a pill appraiser. The burly elder replied with a nod. Do you have a pill chamber here? Lend me one. The side hall to the left. The burly elder raised a hand and pointed. Han Li had come prepared for this. Without another word, he turned and entered the side chamber, casually shutting the door behind him. At that moment, a figure slowly emerged from the rear hall and sat down heavily in the broad central chair. Glancing toward the side chamber, he said, quite cautious. He even set up an isolation restriction. And not a low-grade one either. Vice Mountain Lord, can this man really refine Tai-grade pills? Asked the high-crowned elder, turning toward the man in the seat of honor. How would I know? We're trying our luck. Let's wait and see the result, the man said with a smile. In the blink of an eye, more than 5 months passed. At last, the side chamber door, which had remained shut the entire time, finally opened. After one failure, Han Li had used his very last portion of spirit materials to finally refine 3 jade clarity pills. This pill is rich in spiritual energy and of excellent quality. Among all the jade clarity pills I have seen in the past, this one ranks easily among the top 3, said the high-crowned elder in praise, cradling one of the freshly made pills in his palm. Excellent, excellent. Taoist friend, your attainments in alchemy are truly consummate. You are indeed qualified to serve as one of our pill appraisers, said the burly elder with the red date face. Compared with the other elder, he remained far calmer, though a smile had appeared on his face. In that case, it is time for the person in charge here, Taoist Jingyang, to come out and meet me, wouldn't you say? Han Li said suddenly with a smile, taking the jade clarity pill back from the high-crowned elder. At those words, both crimson-robed elders stiffened. They exchanged a glance, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Haha. As expected of Taoist Li. You guess my identity at once. A burst of hearty laughter came from the rear hall, and Master Jingyang strode out. At that moment, he too wore a crimson robe identical in style to the others, except that the flame emblem embroidered on his chest was golden. What is there to guess? The day I first arrived here, they didn't even ask my identity before immediately having me attempt alchemy, which means they already knew who I was. And after thinking it over, the only person who knew I would come here seems to have been you, Taoist Jingyang. Besides, you practically feared I wouldn't guess you were the one in charge. You insisted on leaving the main seat in the hall empty, Hanli said with a laugh. Haha, Taoistly, in the future you should learn that some things are best understood without being spoken aloud, Master Jingyang said with a laugh, glancing at the empty chair. With a sweep of his sleeve, the two elders immediately bowed their leave and retired into the rear hall. Ahem, Taoistly, the truth is I wanted to tell you directly from the start. But the auction is jointly organized by Black Mountain Immortal Palace and our 100-craft mountain branch, so there are rules that must be followed. I already knew your skill in alchemy. In truth, I merely had you come here to go through the motions, Master Jingyang said, coughing lightly. I am grateful for your regard. But I hope Taoist Jingyang will not keep this from me. What exactly is your identity? Hanli asked, his brows drawing together slightly. At that, Master Jingyang sighed. Instead of answering right away, he pulled a wine gourd from beneath his robe and took a swig. I am one of the 72 Vice Mountain Lords of 100-Craft Mountain, responsible for overseeing the branch sect in the Black Earth Immortal Region, he said at last, after the wine slid down his throat. The Black Earth Immortal Region? Why not the Black Mountain Immortal Region? Hanli asked, puzzled. The Black Earth Immortal Region, the Black Mountain Immortal Region, the Fuse Immortal Region, and the Yuanjing Immortal Region are all relatively close to one another, and now that the savage wilderness no longer lies between them, they are collectively called the Four Alliance Immortal District. Our branch of 100-Craft Mountain is based in the Black Earth Immortal Region, but its reach covers the entire Four Alliance Immortal District. Otherwise, they would not have stationed a Vice Mountain Lord like me here, Master Jingyang said directly, concealing nothing. If that is the case, then why hide your identity and stay in Wild Crane Valley? Hanli asked, his brows still furrowed. My temperament is much like that old ghost Rahua's. I can't stand being bothered by all those trivial affairs. I heard before that the Black Mountain Immortal Region had such a marvelous place as this, so I came traveling here out of admiration. On the way, I met Yuziki and struck up a close friendship with him, and then together we came to Idle Cloud Mountain and remained in Wild Crane Valley, Master Jingyang explained. Seeing that Hanli still looked somewhat doubtful, Master Jingyang could not help but laugh and scold him. You ungrateful fellow, don't fail to recognize good intentions. I originally had no need to personally handle this Jukuan City auction, nor did I want to meddle in it at all. Wasn't it only because I wanted to help gather news for you about the Flower Heart Stone that I got involved again? And now you go and suspect me for nothing. Tell me, isn't that unfair? Is that truly all? Hanli asked with a relaxed expression and a faint smile. Not entirely. I come to the Yukuan Pavilion auction every time, but in the past I always came in my personal capacity to bid. This time is the exception since I've intervened in the auction's affairs, Master Jingyang said with an embarrassed laugh. No matter what, I must still thank you for this. You have always wanted the brewing methods for fire saliva wine and red mulberry wine. Once I sort them out in a little while, I'll give them to you together with some of my own brewing. As for Wild Crane Valley, you can rest easy. Li is not one to speak carelessly. I absolutely will not say a single extra word, Hanli said, cupping his fists slightly. Master Jingyang raised a thumb in praise. Taoistly, now that is loyalty. Come, let's have a drink. Today, the two of us won't stop until we're thoroughly drunk. On Idle Cloud Mountain, the years drifted by like a white colt flashing past a crack in the wall. In a blink, more than 200 years had gone by. For those 200-odd years, the various idle clouds and wild cranes, living in seclusion on Idle Cloud Mountain, continued as ever, writing poetry, painting, enjoying romance and moonlight, letting years pass like days, each living out an immortal life in the way he or she most preferred. Most of them, on the contrary, cared little for closed-door cultivation. As for whether a few more people might appear in the mountain, or a few disappear, no one cared much either. After all, to have come to Idle Cloud Mountain in one's lifetime and met here once was already fate. Since no one cared about the past, why ask after the future? The true Immortal Realm was still the same true Immortal Realm. Yet in the mortal world several generations might already have risen and fallen, passing through countless feuds and bloodshed, perhaps even into an entirely new dynasty. As the saying went, One day in the Immortal Realm, 1,000 years spent out in the human world. Ever since settling in Moguang and taking on a new identity, Hanli would still travel great distances at intervals to enter Juquan's inner city and search there for the Xuanji crystal stone. Over time, many of the shopkeepers in the inner city's various merchant houses had done pill business with him a few times. Before long, they all recognized him and knew that Fireleaf sect had an outer sect elder who was single-mindedly searching for the Flower Heart Stone. During his most recent trips into the city, however, Hanli noticed that many places were under repair, and some of the main streets had already begun to be decorated with lanterns and colored ornaments in preparation for the grand founding celebration held once every 1,000 years in Juquan City, when merchants from all directions would arrive. Especially over the last few months, ferry boats from elsewhere in the Black Mountain Immortal region and even from several nearby immortal regions had been flying into the city in dense succession, and the various ports throughout the city had grown ever busier. Outside the shops throughout the city, all kinds of banners and placards had long since been hung. Written in gold dust upon them were phrases meant to attract customers, such as, "genuine goods at honest prices," and "immortals and mortals treated alike." Some merchants, unwilling to follow old conventions, took a different route and wrote things like "buy one get one free," discount offerings, and "once in 3,000 years." Compared with ordinary times, the flow of people in Juquan City had become far denser. The immortal inns run by the various merchant guilds were already unable to meet demand, and had long been packed full with visiting merchants and cultivators. Many sects within the city had also begun renting out their own villas and guest rooms temporarily to earn part of the rental income. Even the floating Cloud Mountain range far outside the city had lost its usual tranquility. Many reclusive cultivators who had long lived in the mountains had begun to stir restlessly, planning to make a trip into Juquan City during the celebration to hunt for things that caught their eye. In theory, they lived so close that they should not have felt such intense excitement over Juquan City's grand festival. Yet in truth, they were just like the out-of-town cultivators who had come from afar, eagerly awaiting the day of the celebration's arrival. The reason was simple. During the 7 days of the Juquan City celebration, the boundary between inner city and outer city would be broken. At that time, the 4 gates of the inner city would all stand open, with no restrictions whatsoever, and anyone would be allowed to enter. Moreover, while the inner city remained open, hundreds of auctions of varying scale would be held under the auspices of different powers. Among them, the most eye-catching of all would naturally be the Grand Auction at Yukuan Pavilion, jointly organized by the Northern Palace branch of Black Mountain Immortal Palace and the 100 Craft Mountain branch. The reason that auction drew the attention of nearly half the Black Mountain Immortal region was not only its formidable official backing, but also because at nearly every one of its auctions, several top-tier treasures appeared. Treasures so rare that even Tai Jade immortals would covet them. And whenever such treasures appeared, the major powers would battle fiercely over them, each relying on the depth of its own foundations and strength. No matter who ended up taking them, the matter would become the talk of the time. 7 days before the celebration began, Hanli had already moved into Yukuan Pavilion along with Master Jingyang. Beneath the building was an underground palace filled with ingenious arrays and mechanisms, guarded day and night by 3 golden immortal elders who never left their posts. The auction items shipped in from the Black Mountain Immortal region and from elsewhere were all stored there. Hanli, together with 2 other pill appraisers, examined the pills, spirit medicines, and similar treasures there under Master Jingyang's supervision. Once everything had been confirmed, they registered it all and entered it into the auction catalog. It was not until the evening before the celebration began that all the auction goods had finally arrived at Yukuan Pavilion and been inventoried and stored away. Master Jingyang, long accustomed to an idle life, found the whole affair unbearably vexing. Once he had finally finished with all those trivial matters, he took advantage of the moonlit night and went to the courtyard residence arranged for Hanli. Before he could even speak outside the door, Hanli had already swept open the door with a flick of his sleeve and invited him in. "So? Handling everything personally feels pretty good, doesn't it?" "Ha!" After inviting Master Jingyang to sit down, Hanli poured him a cup of clear tea and teased him with a smile. "It's been a very long time since I dealt with all these detailed affairs. I'm truly not used to it. So don't make fun of me, kid," Master Jingyang said with a bitter smile, waving his hand. Then, casting a somewhat disdainful glance at the tea Hanli had poured, he asked, "Do you still have any fire saliva wine? Didn't I already give you the recipe? Why are you still asking me for wine?" Hanli asked with a light laugh. "Don't be so stingy. Your wine has been aged longer. Mine hasn't even reached 150 years yet. The flavor is nowhere close. Besides, I'm not drinking yours for nothing. I've got a bit of inside information to share with you," Master Jingyang said, lowering his voice and adopting a mysterious air. Hanli smiled helplessly at that. With a wave of his hand, a dark gray wine jar appeared on the table. "This is the last jar of my private stock. It's aged even longer than the one I took out last time, so your little tidbit had better be worth the wine." With that, Hanli slapped away the clay seal over the mouth of the jar. As the rich aroma of wine spread through the room, Master Jingyang's craving was instantly hooked. He could not wait and quickly poured himself a full cup using the teacup, then drained it in one gulp. As the fine liquor slid down his throat, he tipped his head back, smacked his lips, and savored the lingering taste with an expression of utter intoxicated delight. Watching from the side, Hanli almost laughed, though he did not hurry him. "Truly a fine wine," Master Jingyang said, raising a thumb in admiration. No sooner had he finished speaking than he reached for the wine jar to pour himself another cup, only for Hanli to stop him. "Well? What's the news?" Hanli asked. "Heh, couldn't you let me have another mouthful or two first?" Master Jingyang said with an awkward laugh. "Speak." Hanli ignored him. All right. I'll tell you. The Xuanji crystal stone you want has turned up. It was among the final batch of goods delivered this afternoon," Master Jingyang said, swaying his head with satisfaction. "Is that true?" Hanli immediately brightened and pressed him. "Don't celebrate too soon. The asking price on that thing is no joke. The opening bid alone is 1,000 Immortal Essence Stones, and it's entirely possible the final price will multiply several times over. Is your purse really fat enough?" Master Jingyang asked, deliberately looking him up and down. Hanli laughed inwardly. Even if it multiplied several times, that only meant a few thousand Immortal Essence Stones. For an ordinary golden immortal cultivator, that was certainly a considerable fortune, but for him as he was now, it hardly counted for much. "Taoist Jingyang, don't forget that I'm an alchemist. I may spend money like water through an open floodgate, but I make it just as quickly. I've been planning for this for a very long time, so naturally I've made preparations," Hanli said with a smile. Seeing Hanli look so assured, Master Jingyang merely assumed that he was new to the scene and had no idea how dangerous these auctions could be. How easy it was with one careless step, to be stripped bare and left poor as a beggar. So instead of directly dousing him with cold water, he said, "If you don't have enough Immortal Essence Stones when the time comes, you can first pawn some pills to our 100-craft mountain. I'll definitely give you a satisfactory price, and if you want to redeem them later, you may do so at the same price." "Well, pretty loyal of me, isn't it?" Hanli pushed the entire jar of fire saliva wine over to Master Jingyang and said crisply, "Loyal indeed." The next morning, a resonant bell pealed throughout the whole of Jukuan City. The 4 gates of the inner city, east, south, west, and north, opened wide all at once. All of the inspection cultivators stationed there withdrew, while the number of patrol cultivators atop the city walls increased several-fold. As the rune restrictions over the gates faded, cultivators of every sort who had long been waiting outside surged impatiently through the gate tunnels and poured into the inner city. The streets and alleys of the once quiet inner city immediately became noisy and crowded. The chaotic stream of people dispersed along the roads in every direction. Some headed toward shops that sold magic treasures and immortal tools, while others went straight to various auction venues. The entire inner city became even livelier than the outer city. By nightfall, when the lights first blazed throughout the inner city, red lanterns shone everywhere, turning the whole place brilliantly bright. Fireworks rose again and again from the city walls to heighten the festive spirit, and the atmosphere of excitement did not diminish in the least. So it went for 6 days in a row, and at last the most anticipated event in the city, the Yukuan Pavilion auction, opened. As organizers, Hanli and Master Jingyang naturally entered the auction hall ahead of the others. Only after entering did Hanli discover that, though from the outside Yukuan Pavilion looked no more than a tower, Its interior was astonishingly spacious. At the center of the building stood a broad circular stone platform, clearly meant for displaying the auction items. All around it were tightly connected small private rooms, neatly arranged in a ring. Once the first floor was filled, the second and third floors formed rings of their own. Altogether, there appeared to be several hundred such rooms. Inside each private room stood a low table and a meditation cushion. A burner of sandalwood incense smoldered in the upper right corner of the table, while the center held spirit vegetables, spiritual fruits, and a pot of fine wine. Han Li and Master Jingyang chose a private room on the second floor and entered first. Inside stood a young woman dressed like a palace maid. She immediately added another meditation cushion for them, and poured wine for both. By chance, Han Li glanced sideways and was somewhat surprised to discover that this palace maid was not a real person at all, but merely a puppet. Because her aura was so faint, equivalent only to that of a core formation cultivator, it was actually difficult to notice at first glance. Daoist Jingyang, are you really not going to preside over the auction? Han Li withdrew his gaze and asked. You brat, wasn't everything before this enough to keep me busy? Right now I just want to sit here quietly as an ordinary attendee. If I see something I like, I'll bid on it and that's that. Reverend Jingyang lifted his wine cup, swirled it lightly, and spoke in an easy tone. But since this auction is being handled by your 100 Creations Mountain, why go through all this trouble and bid at the auction yourself? Why not just intercept the item directly? Or if that won't work, couldn't you simply buy it through your sect? Han Li asked, puzzled. You don't know the half of it, fellow Daoist Li. The things being auctioned here don't belong solely to 100 Creations Mountain. Some were confiscated by Black Mountain Immortal Palace from elsewhere, and some were sent here by powerful figures from various sections. In short, this auction is tied up with too many interests. It's not something I can meddle with as I please. Reverend Jingyang shook his head and drained the cup in one swallow. So in other words, there's no way I can use your connections to spend fewer Immortal Essence Stones? Han Li asked after a thoughtful nod and another drink. The auction has its own rules and system, and people from the Immortal Palace are watching over it. Even I have to rely on real bidding and real luck, let alone you. There's no room for tricks there. The only thing you can do is prepare as many Immortal Essence Stones as possible. Fine treasures are like fine wine. Both are priceless. If you've taken a fancy to something, strike early, or you'll only regret it later, Reverend Jingyang said with a laugh. As they spoke, people had already begun arriving at the entrance of the pavilion, presenting their gold jade silks, one after another as they entered and started choosing the better private rooms on the third floor. A little over an hour later, all several hundred private rooms inside Jade Kuan Tower were full. After a brief glance around, Han Li noticed that nearly all of them were at least early golden immortal cultivators. Among them were even a number of old monsters who had concealed their auras so well that even he could not probe their depths. After a moment's thought, however, it made sense. Gold jade silk was expensive and rare, something no ordinary cultivator could obtain. Anyone who could get hold of one and enter Jade Kuan Tower naturally would not be a true immortal or anyone below that realm. As for those whose cultivation or status fell short, they had not come in vain either. There were hundreds of other auctions and trade fairs prepared for them elsewhere in the city, not to mention every other kind of gathering imaginable. At that moment, the high-crowned old man from 100 Creations Mountain who was in charge of the venue, together with a white-robed man dressed in the garb of Black Mountain Immortal Palace, walked onto the circular auction stage at the center. Oh right, I haven't introduced him yet. That man is Fu Yuhai, the one in charge of the Immortal Palace's branch residence in the northern part of this immortal domain. He's also a late golden immortal, but he doesn't have much real power here. The one who truly runs things is the Heavenly Court inspector stationed in the city. That said, the man keeps deeply to himself and rarely shows his face, Reverend Jingyang explained. So Heavenly Court does value this place rather highly. I wonder what kind of cultivation that inspector possesses? Han Li asked, arching a brow in what seemed like an offhand manner. Hard to say. The man is far too mysterious. Even I've never seen his true person, Reverend Jingyang replied, shaking his head as he raised yet another freshly filled cup to his lips. In just the short time he had spent talking to Han Li, an entire pot of fine wine had already gone down his throat. The palace-maiden puppet promptly brought over another. By then Fu Yuhai had finished his introduction and all the grandiose opening formalities. The old man with the high crown stepped forward and continued. In bidding, one must act according to one's means. Do not raise the price recklessly. Once the hammer falls, there can be no remorse. Anyone who deliberately refuses to honor a winning bid will be pursued by this establishment to the very end. And now the Jade Kuan Tower Grand Auction officially begins. Fu Yuhai announced in a clear voice as his gaze swept over the hall. When his words fell, the two men withdrew together, and an alien man in a robe of multicolored feathers drifted up onto the stage. His appearance was strikingly strange. His cheeks were exceptionally broad, his mouth rather large, and his neck absurdly long and thin, making him look like a toad's head perched atop the neck of a giant multicolored bird. This alien was the auctioneer presiding over the event. Honored guests, welcome to Jade Kuan Tower, and let us join together in this splendid occasion. His appearance was unpleasant enough, but his voice was clear and resonant, touched with a peculiar magnetism that made it unexpectedly pleasant to hear. Without further delay, let us present our first item of the day, the Phoenix Cry Zither. As he spoke, a graceful and strikingly beautiful female cultivator stepped onto the stage with a poised smile, carrying a crimson guqin in both hands. All eyes in the hall were naturally drawn to it. Hanli let his gaze pass over the instrument and found that it lived up to its name. Its body had been crafted from a precious wood known as chicken blood timber. The head of the zither was carved in the shape of a phoenix's head, while clusters of feathers gathered at the tail, forming the likeness of a phoenix's tail. The entire instrument was smooth and lustrous as jade, with fine red hues showing through it like streaks of blood-colored cloud. It was magnificent to behold. At the auctioneer's signal, the beautiful female cultivator lightly plucked the strings with her slender fingers, and a wave of exquisite music rang out at once. Even those with no knowledge of the instrument could hear that it was a masterpiece among zither. Yet for all its beauty, it was only an ordinary worldly object. There was not the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power in it. The famous Jade Kuan Tower auction was opening with nothing more than a mundane object? Hanli found it baffling, but what shocked him even more was the starting price. I trust all of you have heard of Pei Qingling, the thousand-finger phantom melody? This Phoenix Cry Zither was the instrument she cherished most before she began cultivating. After formally stepping onto the path, she gradually abandoned it, and after passing through many hands over the years, it has now resurfaced here beneath the dust. The opening bid is 50 Immortal Essence Stones. Each increase must be no less than 5. The auctioneer announced smoothly, recounting the zither's origins. 50 Immortal Essence Stones. I'll take it. The moment he finished, a soft and alluring female voice rang out from a private room on the 3rd floor. I bid 60 Immortal Essence Stones. Someone else followed at once. 70 Immortal Essence Stones. Came another voice. 75. Who exactly is this Pei Qingling? Why would a worldly object she once used be sold here? And why would the opening bid already be so high? Hanli asked, bewildered. It was only a mundane item, not some immortal treasure. Even if it had been an immortal treasure, unless it had reached a certain quality, it should not be worth dozens of Immortal Essence Stones just because someone famous had used it. In fact, it wasn't even a matter of Immortal Essence Stones. Strictly speaking, it wasn't worth even dozens of Spirit Stones. Several dozen Immortal Essence Stones was no small amount. Even medicinal pills useful to golden immortals or immortal materials and artifacts could be purchased for such a sum. You mean to say you've never heard of Thousand-Finger Phantom Melody? Reverend Jingyang looked surprised, then began to explain slowly. Pei Qingling comes from a musical clan in the Metal Origin Immortal domain. She showed extraordinary talent for cultivation from childhood, but she was obsessed with music and refused to cultivate. Then on the day of her 16th birthday, after performing a piece called Rainbow Phoenix Breaks the Formation, she suddenly declared she would begin cultivation. From then on her progress was astonishing. She advanced by leaps and bounds, entered the Tao through the 5 tones, and eventually reached the Great Luo realm. So that's how it is, Hanli said thoughtfully. Don't think it isn't worth it. If there's ever a chance to return something like this to its original owner, what you gain is a tremendous personal connection. And if Pei Qingling truly becomes the Tao ancestor of the five tones one day, the value of this thing could rise 100-fold or more, Reverend Jingyang said with a smile, as if seeing right through Han Li's thoughts. That is true, Han Li admitted with a nod. Heh, they say Pei Qingling is a breathtaking beauty, rare even among immortals and mortals alike. Looking at how fiercely all those male cultivators are scrambling for it, I'd wager their hearts aren't entirely free of certain romantic little fantasies. Though of course they're only fooling themselves. Reverend Jingyang sent the words to Han Li by voice transmission after taking another drink. Han Li silently nodded, plainly in agreement. In the end, the Guqin was won for 120 Immortal Essence Stones by a middle-aged man wearing a scholar's headscarf, his features solemn and his bearing steeped in cultured elegance. Congratulations to this fellow Taoist on obtaining the Phoenix Tail Zither. Next, let us bring forth our second treasure, the Purple Sun Pill. With that announcement from the auctioneer, the female cultivator carrying the zither stepped down, while another female cultivator came up holding a purple tray. On it rested a palm-sized white jade box. This item is a transitional pill useful from the Golden Immortal stage to the Tai stage. It benefits cultivators on either side of those two major realms. There are 13 pills in a single batch, all flawless in quality and exceptional in grade. I hope none of you miss this opportunity. The opening bid is 100 Immortal Essence Stones. As he spoke, the auctioneer opened the white jade box. The moment the lid was lifted, 13 delicate pills the size of little fingertips were revealed inside. Purple light flickered faintly over them, mist rose softly from their surfaces, and a curling medicinal fragrance instantly filled Jade Kuan Tower. Han Li recognized the pill at once as one of the many spirit medicines he had once appraised. Its quality truly was excellent. Jade Kuan Tower setting the base price at 100 Immortal Essence Stones was genuinely fair. If anything, quite low. 110 Immortal Essence Stones, someone quickly bid. 120. Another voice followed immediately. 130. Round after round of bidding drove the price of the Purple Sun Pills swiftly up to 160 Immortal Essence Stones. At that point, the price was already fairly appropriate. Going higher would no longer be worth it. So after a cultivator in a black robe called out that figure, no one else continued. After asking 3 times, the auctioneer sold the item to the black-robed man. The third auction item was an extremely high-grade acquired immortal artifact, a Thunderfire Command Medallion of formidable power, suitable even for late golden immortal cultivators. It started at 130 Immortal Essence Stones, and was eventually sold for more than 200. As one item after another was brought forth, the mood in the hall grew steadily more heated, and time slipped away bit by bit. Han Li's mind remained fixed on the Xuanji crystal, and he had no interest in the treasures that came before it. Just as impatience began to gnaw at him, he suddenly heard the auctioneer say, "This next item is called the Severed Time Jar. It is a treasure containing a trace of the law of time. Whatever is stored inside it, whether a mundane object or an immortal treasure, can be kept as though time itself has been cut off. Even after 1,000,000 years, it will remain unchanged. The opening bid is 500 Immortal Essence Stones. 510 Immortal Essence Stones. Someone bid at once. 520. I'll offer 550. The price climbed rapidly, soaring all the way to 670 Immortal Essence Stones. Then the black-robed man suddenly spoke. 700 Immortal Essence Stones. That sharp jump in price brought a brief hush over Jade Kuan Tower, but it was soon broken again. 710 Immortal Essence Stones, Han Li said abruptly. The black-robed man, seated on the second floor like Han Li, turned to glance in his direction and said, 720 Immortal Essence Stones. 750, Han Li replied crisply. Auction bidding was not always a calm back and forth of steady increments. Sometimes a sudden large increase was meant to show one's opponent that one was absolutely determined to win, forcing the other side to back down. 760 Immortal Essence Stones. The black-robed man was clearly not intimidated. 800. Han Li raised the price sharply once again, causing a burst of uproar throughout the White Jade Tower. Nearly every gaze turned in his direction. The black-robed man seemed to decide the item was no longer worth it, and did not continue. Is this thing really that important? Is it worth spending so many Immortal Essence Stones? Reverend Jingyang could not help knitting his brows as he asked. You may not know this, fellow Taoist, Hanli said with a smile. We alchemists often prepare certain special spirit liquids. Their cost is extremely high, yet they cannot be preserved for long, which leads to heavy losses. If I obtain this item, the Immortal Essence Stones I save in the future may far exceed these 700. In truth, what he wanted to test was whether this severed time jar could preserve the green liquid or crystalline grains condensed inside the little bottle. If it could, that would be an enormous gain. If it could not, then obtaining a rare time law treasure at this price would still not be a loss. After Hanli acquired the item, the auction continued. The treasures that followed only grew finer in quality, and naturally their prices rose with them. All kinds of magical treasures were brought forth in succession, and the cultivators from every side bid more and more fiercely. Hanli joined the bidding on 2 items that could nourish the soul, but the black-robed man seemed almost to be targeting him deliberately, competing to the utmost for each one and ultimately buying them at high prices. Hanli did not need those things with the same urgency he felt toward time law objects, nor did he wish to attract too much attention, so whenever the price rose beyond what he considered reasonable, he withdrew of his own accord. Soon 3 hours had passed, and the auction had already gone beyond the halfway mark, yet the Xuanji crystal had still not appeared. Fellow Taoist Jingyang, give me at least a little more. When exactly will the Xuanji crystal be auctioned? Hanli asked by voice transmission, unable to suppress his impatience. Reverend Jingyang fought back a laugh and replied, the only thing that could leave fellow Taoistly this restless and clawing at his insides is that flower heart stone. Don't worry. If I remember correctly, the very next item should be it. No sooner had he spoken than the auctioneer announced, this next treasure is no ordinary thing. It was born in a 10,000 jong abyss where ghostly souls and dead spirits gather. Though the surrounding environment is vile and polluted, it rises unstained from corruption, and is naturally one of the most spiritual things in the world. It is called the essence of 10,000 souls. A single stalk can strengthen a golden immortal cultivator's soul by 10 to 30%. Just hearing that description made Hanli's heart tighten. His brows drew together, and his attention locked onto the stage. This item is the so-called soul immortal herb, the 10,000 souls grass. The opening bid is 1,000 Immortal Essence Stones, the auctioneer declared in a clear voice. Hanli abruptly turned to look at Reverend Jingyang, his face full of confusion. The latter looked equally startled, clearly having no idea why the auction order had suddenly been changed. Fellow Taoist Jingyang, what is going on? Did you remember wrong? Hanli asked in a low voice. I may love my wine, but I'm confident I wouldn't forget the order of a mere 100 or so items, much less the one you care about most. Wait here, I'll ask, Reverend Jingyang said awkwardly before closing his eyes. While they were still puzzling over it, the bidding had already erupted throughout the hall. In no time, the price had been pushed above 2,000 Immortal Essence Stones. An item that could strengthen the soul was also an exceptionally rare treasure for Hanli. With it, perhaps his cultivation of the spirit refinement art might benefit greatly as well. After hesitating for a moment, Hanli found himself tempted enough to consider joining the bidding. But just then, Reverend Jingyang seemed to finish exchanging a voice transmission with someone. He opened his eyes and let out a long breath of relief. Seeing that, Hanli immediately swallowed back the price he had been about to call and looked to him in inquiry. Don't be anxious, fellow Taoistly. Someone suddenly requested that this item be added to the auction. The next one should be the Xuanji crystal, Reverend Jingyang said dryly, with a trace of apology. So that's what happened. Does this sort of thing occur often? Hanli asked, slightly frowning. It never has before. Usually once the auction list is arranged, nothing is added or removed. After all, adding an item at the last moment means finding someone to appraise it at the last moment too, which creates a lot of extra trouble, Reverend Jingyang said after thinking for a bit. We've already waited this long. What's one more item? Still, whoever demanded this late edition must have no small status to enjoy that kind of privilege, Hanli said with a smile, sounding unconcerned. No kidding. I've heard the person who came up with the idea on the spot has some connection to the inspector in the inner city. Personally, though, I suspect this 10,000 souls grass belongs to that inspector himself. If one's cultivation hadn't reached that level, how could one casually produce such a treasure? Reverend Jingyang said with a grin. Hanli silently nodded. His expression did not change in the least, but inwardly he forcibly suppressed the impulse to raise his paddle and decisively gave up on bidding. Whenever something unusual happens, there is usually something behind it. Whatever the origin of the item, he could not shake the feeling that something about it was off. After a fierce battle of bids, the black-robed man ultimately won the stock of 10,000 souls grass for the steep price of 3,500 Immortal Essence Stones. Our next treasure is one many of you have likely been waiting for a long time, the auctioneer said, still smiling broadly, evidently excited by the unexpectedly high price fetched by the previous item. As he spoke, a green brocade box was brought onto the stage by a young girl in yellow robes. Several layers of sealing talismans had been pasted over the jade box. With a light motion, the girl peeled away the talismans, and the brocade box opened on its own, revealing a fist-sized green crystal. The crystal shone with a deep green light. It did not look especially striking at first glance, but within it one could vaguely see a flower-shaped pattern, naturally formed and deeply embedded inside the stone. A strange fragrance drifted from the crystal. Everyone present smelled it, and it seemed as though their organs had been washed clean. Their whole bodies felt suddenly soothed and refreshed. A stir passed through the hall, with many people giving cries of delight. The moment Hanli saw the green crystal, his eyes lit up and he unconsciously sat a little straighter. I believe many of you have already recognized it. That's right, this is the Xuanji crystal, also known as the flower heart stone, an exceptional ingredient for refining pills that dispel baleful qi and overcome baleful decline. What this means for fellow Taoists on the verge of advancing to the Tai realm hardly needs explaining. Moreover, this piece of Xuanji crystal came from a Xuanji flower more than 200,000 years old. It took this establishment tremendous effort to acquire it. Please do not let it slip by. The opening bid is 1,000 Immortal Essence Stones, and each increase must be no less than 100, the auctioneer explained before declaring the bidding open. 1,000 Immortal Essence Stones. The instant the words left his mouth, a voice called out, 1,100. 1,300. At once a torrent of bids rose and overlapped throughout the hall. A rare treasure like the Xuanji crystal, which could help one survive baleful decline and break through into the Tai realm, was precious beyond measure to anyone. Even if one had no immediate need for it, one could still buy it for someone close at hand. It would never go to waste. The price soared rapidly, passing 2,000 Immortal Essence Stones in the blink of an eye. Once it reached that level, however, the number of bidders suddenly dropped, and the pace of the increase slowed. Fellow Taoist Li, haven't you been searching for this all along? Why haven't you made a move? Reverend Jingyang asked when he saw Hanli still sitting still. I am determined to obtain this item. The people who truly intend to take the Xuanji crystal have not yet acted, so there is no need for me to rush, Hanli said calmly after glancing around. When the bidding broke through 2,500 Immortal Essence Stones, the scene fell briefly still. The bidder at that point was a fat, broad man dressed in gaudy finery. He did not look like a cultivator so much as a merchant. Two extraordinarily beautiful female cultivators lounged in his arms. From time to time the two women took pastries and tea from the side and fed them into the man's mouth. Surrounded by beauty, he wore a look of pure enjoyment. Fellow Taoist Gui of Heavenly Treasure Trading House bids 2,500 Immortal Essence Stones. Is there anyone offering more? The auctioneer asked with a smile, sweeping his gaze over the hall. 3,000 Immortal Essence Stones, drawled a lazy voice. It was the same black-robed man who had earlier bought the 10,000 souls grass, and he had increased the price by a full 500 at once. A buzz of discussion spread through the crowd. The Xuanji crystal was indeed precious, but at this price it was already edging into the unreasonable. 3,100. The fat man's expression turned ugly, but he still called out another bid. 3,500. The black-robed man snorted and raised the price sharply again, as though several hundred Immortal Essence Stones meant nothing at all to him. The fat man's whole body of flesh quivered, and his face darkened. He did not bid again. The two female cultivators beside him, seeing how sour his mood had become, sat obediently at his side, not daring to move carelessly. 3,600. Another aged voice joined in. It came from an old man with gray-white hair, absently toying with a purple sword only 4 or 5 inches long. Purple lightning flickered incessantly across the blade. Every so often, a fearsome arc of lightning flashed through the old man's eyes as well, enough to make anyone who met his gaze shudder. Hanli looked toward him. The man's aura was immense. He was one of the few people whose cultivation Hanli had been unable to discern earlier. Fellow Taoist Jingyang, this man seems anything but ordinary. Do you happen to know who he is? Hanli asked in what seemed a casual tone. That man is Feng Tianyao, an elder of the Purple Lightning Sword sect from the Broken Boundary Mountains in the northeast of Black Mountain Immortal Domain. He's a Tai cultivator. I didn't expect him to compete for this as well. It seems the price of the Xuanji crystal will rise very high indeed. Fellow Taoist Li, you'll have to fend for yourself now. Reverend Jingyang looked at him with a hint of sympathy. So that's who he is. Many thanks for the reminder, fellow Taoist Jingyang, Hanli replied, nodding without much visible reaction. 3,800. While Hanli and Reverend Jingyang were speaking, the black-robed man raised the price again, though this time no longer so aggressively, adding only 200 Immortal Essence Stones. 4,000. Another calm voice rang out abruptly. At last Hanli had made his move. He had already won 2 items earlier and attracted no small amount of attention, so the moment he spoke, many people looked his way, including the gray-haired old man and the black-robed man. Seeing that another serious competitor had entered, both men's expressions sank. 4,100. The gray-haired old man's brows twitched as he said in a heavy voice. 4,200. The black-robed man followed immediately. 4,300. Hanli said slowly, unhurried and composed. The three of them battled back and forth until the price swiftly reached 5,000 Immortal Essence Stones, a figure called by the black-robed man. Many cultivators in the hall looked astonished. In the end, this was only a spiritual material. Even if it was a precious one capable of helping someone survive baleful decline, bidding it up to this level was truly excessive. With that same amount of Immortal Essence Stones, there were countless other options. There was no need to hang oneself on this one tree, and judging from the trend, the price clearly had not yet reached its end. 5,000 Immortal Essence Stones? Heh, you two really do have a sharp eye. Since that's the case, I'll leave this item to you, the gray-haired old man suddenly said with a cold laugh, no longer bidding. 5,100, Hanli said calmly, ignoring the old man's mockery. 5,200. The black-robed man gave no ground whatsoever. 5,500. Hanli suddenly exerted himself, sharply driving up the price. All through the hall, people turned to look toward Hanli's room, most of them shaking their heads. Fellow Taoist Li, since we're friends, I'll speak plainly. This Xuanji crystal is indeed not low in quality, but this price is simply too high. Under normal circumstances, 4,000 or 5,000 Immortal Essence Stones would already be the absolute ceiling. Continuing to bid now doesn't mean much, Reverend Jingyang advised. Thank you for your concern, fellow Taoist Jingyang, but I am determined to obtain this item today. I have searched bitterly for it for a long time. Just as you said, fine treasures are like fine wine, they are priceless. If you've set your sights on one, you should act, Hanli said with a smile. You. Now you're even using my own words back at me. If you're short on Immortal Essence Stones, just remember what I said, Reverend Jingyang said with a shrug, letting the matter drop. 5,600. The black-robed man fell silent for a moment before slowly raising the price again. 6,000 Immortal Essence Stones. Hanli drove the price up once more with a sudden leap. The black-robed man looked deeply at Hanli and finally fell silent. He made no further bid. On the stage, although the auctioneer seemed somewhat unwilling to stop, no one else spoke, and the final price had already exceeded his expectations by a great deal. After confirming it 3 times, he loudly declared the Xuanji crystal sold. Hanli's expression did not change much, though a trace of pain still showed in his eyes. Fellow Taoist Li really paid in blood today. It seems your fortune is not shallow at all. But this is exactly how it should be when you've found something truly worth having. Compared with all the time and energy spent searching, it's still a bargain. After all, no amount of gold can buy back an inch of time, Reverend Jingyang said with a hearty laugh, trying to comfort him. Please don't make fun of me, fellow Taoist Jingyang. When it comes to wealth, how would I dare compare with the Vice Mountain Lord of 100 Creations Mountain? Hanli said, shaking his head with a smile. In truth, 100 Creations Mountain thirsts for capable people like you. If you should ever be interested, you would be most welcome to join us as a guest elder, Reverend Jingyang said, half in jest. It has been a very long time since I joined any sect or faction. Otherwise I would not have come to idle Cloud Mountain to live like a wild crane. After all my years of cultivation, a place like this is rare indeed. A true retreat from the world, and with friends like you, fellow Taoist Jingyang, that is more than enough, Hanli replied noncommittally. While the two joked and chatted, the auction continued on the stage. Before long, several more rare treasures were brought out one after another like flowing water. Under the alien auctioneer's direction, each sold for an impressive price, stirring yet another wave of excitement. By this point, the auction was nearing its end. Honored fellow Taoists, what comes next are the three most precious finale treasures of this auction. The first is this cultivation art, the Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Technique. A blue box was set upon the stage. Inside lay an ancient-looking blue jade slip as the auctioneer spoke. Many people below showed puzzled expressions, apparently unfamiliar with the name, though others visibly changed color and began whispering among themselves. May I ask, could this Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Technique possibly be the cultivation method once used by the Azure Sea True Lord, whose name shook the Black Mountain Immortal Domain in ages past? A burly man in a blue robe asked loudly, his face alight with excitement. That is correct. This Azure Sea Heavenly Wave Technique is indeed the primary cultivation art once practiced by Azure Sea True Lord, who swept through the Black Mountain Immortal Domain several million years ago. It can be cultivated all the way to the peak of the Tai realm. As far as water-attributed techniques in Black Mountain Immortal Domain are concerned, this one unquestionably ranks among the top 5. By practicing it, one may not only comprehend the law of water, but also has a certain chance of awakening the higher law of tides, thereby gaining access to the tide heavenly wave divine ability for which Azure Sea True Lord was famed. In the battle at Moon Sea long ago, he used a single move of tide heavenly wave to annihilate tens of thousands of savage beasts at once. I need not say more about its power. Naturally, the incantation for that technique is also recorded in this jade slip. Of course, cultivating this art requires exceedingly harsh conditions. One must possess a water-attributed spirit body, or better yet a water-immortal body. Furthermore, before reaching the true immortal realm, one must have cultivated only pure water-attributed techniques. The true immortal body one condenses cannot contain the slightest trace of any other elemental power. That concludes the introduction. Fellow Taoists who are interested may bid freely. The opening price is 3,000 Immortal Essence Stones, and each increase must be no less than 200. After that thorough explanation, the auctioneer officially opened the bidding. Hanli knew nothing certain of Azure Sea True Lord's exact fame in his time, but after hearing the auctioneer's detailed account, many people below visibly grew excited and immediately began bidding. Top-tier cultivation arts like this were seldom encountered. Used properly, such a method might give rise to an entire powerful clan or sect. Hanli remained calm, chatting softly with Reverend Jingyang. The technique sounded good enough, but it naturally held no appeal for him. He watched only for the spectacle. More and more people joined in, and the price climbed higher and higher, soon passing 7,000 Immortal Essence Stones. A flash of surprise crossed Han Li's eyes. He had gained an even deeper appreciation of the allure of high-level cultivation arts. I bid 10,000 Immortal Essence Stones. A sudden shout rang out, raising the price by 3,000 in one breath and instantly suppressing all other voices. Hanli could not help looking over. The bidder was the same blue-robed burly man who had spoken up earlier. This man was only at mid-golden immortal stage, yet he had named such a staggering price. Clearly this place was full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. At that figure, the others looked at one another, and for a moment no one else bid. The blue-robed man's face lit up with joy. 11,000. Just then another voice came from elsewhere. This time it was a feather-crowned Taoist priest holding a horsetail whisk. His aura was immense. He was unmistakably a Tai cultivator. 12,000. The blue-robed man's face darkened, but he showed no sign of yielding because of the other's cultivation. He raised the price again, clearly determined to win the Azure Sea Heavenly Wave technique. 13,000. The feather-crowned Taoist casually flicked the whisk in his hand and replied in the same indifferent tone. 14,000. 15,000. The two of them seemed utterly intent on the technique, and in the blink of an eye the price surpassed 20,000. Everyone present shook their heads. The Azure Sea Heavenly Wave technique was indeed exquisite, but to sell for this price was simply too much. One could probably buy 2 or 3 other high-level law techniques for the same sum. 22,000 Immortal Essence Stones. The feather-crowned Taoist's expression remained tranquil, as though he did not care about the price in the slightest. The blue-robed man's eyes had reddened, and his breathing had grown coarse, yet he did not speak. It seemed his financial resources had reached their limit. Elder Zhu of Water Mirror Sect bids 22,000 Immortal Essence Stones. Is there anyone with a higher offer? The auctioneer asked after waiting a moment. The hall was silent. No one answered. The auctioneer asked once more. Seeing that there was still no response, he was just about to declare the technique sold. Wait. I don't have enough Immortal Essence Stones on me. I want to pledge this item. The blue-robed man suddenly stood up and flipped his hand, producing a long object that looked like a beast bone, jade green all over. The auctioneer froze for a moment, but the auction did indeed allow for the custom of pledging items as collateral. He immediately announced a temporary pause and had one of the attendants go over, take the bone, and deliver it to the appraisers at the side. Han Li sat up at once, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. The jade-green beast bone the blue-robed man had produced was extremely similar in both shape and size to the bone Han Li had obtained from the skeleton of that green rat. Yet even after probing it several times with his spiritual sense, the blue-robed man's bone showed not the slightest spatial fluctuation, nor any spiritual power at all. It seemed no different from an ordinary mundane object. Could it simply look alike? Han Li thought to himself. Over the years he had studied his own green beast bone many times and had become more and more convinced that it was a spatial treasure. It was only that the bone had been sealed by some extraordinarily powerful secret art. No matter what techniques he used, he had never been able to open it. With a faint rustle, Reverend Jingyang beside him suddenly rose to his feet. His expression had turned heated, his gaze locked rigidly on the jade-green beast bone. Seeing such a loss of composure from him, Han Li's eyes flashed again, though the light vanished the next moment. Fellow Taoist Jingyang, do you recognize this beast bone? He asked calmly. Realizing his lapse, Reverend Jingyang quickly sat back down again. Yet he did not answer Han Li's question. Instead he lowered his head with grave solemnity and fell into deep thought, as though weighing something of great importance. Han Li's brow twitched slightly, but he did not interrupt. Before long, the jade-green beast bone was brought to a long table at one side of the auction platform. 3 cultivators in black robes sat behind it. One was a middle-aged scholar, one a white-haired old man, and the last a veiled matron. All 3 possessed deep, steady bearing. They were the 3 treasure appraisers sent by Black Mountain Immortal Palace. Through all the generations, the profits of Jade Kuan Tower's grand auctions had been astonishingly rich. Black Mountain Immortal Palace had long coveted its share and, over the years, had extended its hand further and further into the affair, taking a cut of the profits with each passing auction and sending more people each time. By this particular auction, more than half the personnel involved already came from Black Mountain Immortal Palace. These were things Han Li had learned earlier while chatting idly with Reverend Jingyang.